part two would be really about finding your purpose, or how you find your purpose.
Yeah.
How should we start this conversation? It's a difficult one, but most needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done a lot of work kind of for myself about finding this. And I'm not here to say I have all the answers, or, it's not clear cut, and it's kind of something that you constantly need to be reviewing and thinking about. And also it's something that can kind of be kind of retrospective as well. When I look back at kind of some of my jobs, I worked in an art gallery for a couple of years, literally just on the floor telling people off if they took photos or had backpacks or umbrellas or whatever. But the main part of that job was actually to educate people and to talk to people about art. And people would come in and go, oh, I hate that artwork. And I'll go, oh, why? Like, what is it about it that you don't like? Is it the colors? Is it the way it's framed? Is it the positioning? What if I told you that this artwork's about this? I'm going to help people to open their eyes about that particular artwork and realize that, aesthetically it might not please them, but once they find the deeper meaning, they can relate to it more, right? And so looking back at that role, even though it was kind of quite tedious, long hours standing on your feet, low pay, all that kind of stuff, my purpose in that role was really to help people engage with art better, because I'm really passionate about art. And so it was being able to share that passion with other people and help people see things in a different light. I think that was my purpose at that time, and it was great. And then I left that job to go traveling, which was also great. But you know what I mean? Like, when you kind of look back at some of the jobs you've had, no matter how big or small, I think you can quite clearly see what your purpose was in that role. But also I have definitely had moments where I've thought, oh, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so I've gone a little bit deeper into myself to try and figure out, what is that purpose? What am I trying to do at the moment? And I kind of always keep coming back to two things, solving problems and kind of the greater good. So doing work with purpose, or doing work that makes a difference. So healthcare is obviously an obvious one for that. Like, I keep coming back to that. I kind of keep getting sucked back in. But it is because it aligns with that purpose for me, which is do work that creates good, rather than, I don't know, working for a cigarette company, which is only two big things, right? Yeah.
So if someone is currently trying to figure out their why, or they're not confident in their why, what are some of the practical tips that you could give out to help them in that space?
Well, it kind of depends on the person. I think everyone's different. Personally, I did a few workshops. I kind of looked at everything I've done and where the kind of the symmetry was, or the what's the word I'm looking for? The synergy, I guess, between my roles and kind of what was driving me. And I always kind of keep going back to that school motto of mine, to serve, right? And that's deeply ingrained in me. So that, and I think it's really important for people to kind of look into themselves to see what drives them. And it can't just be like money or status. I think that they need to have a little bit more depth to their purpose-driven work. And no, I'm not bagging anyone that does want to make millions of dollars and to do that, but you do need to find your purpose of why you're being driven to do that. I've listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books, and so that's, I think, just being able to open your mind to different points of views of how to find your purpose, and even just like join a workshop that might help you do it. There's a whole lot of tasks you can do about plotting your favorite kind of quote. Who would you have around a dinner table if you had 10 people dead or alive to have dinner with? And kind of look at things like that and what that says about you. Who do you look up to? And I think it's also not something that you can just sit down and have an answer to that's clear cut in a moment. It's something that might come to you later. And again, like I said, retrospectively, look at things, or just by talking to people, and someone might say, hey, you're a fixer. That's your job. Like, your purpose in life is to fix things. So I think it's just about looking across all kind of avenues of your life, and people and just getting their feedback and understanding how they see you, and then how you see yourself and how you fit into the job context.
That's so
now
interesting.
my purpose now is to be a mum and I love it. So yeah, that's what's fueling me at the moment.
That's really awesome. Have you heard of this framework called Ikigai?
Yeah, I love Ikigai.
Yeah. It's basically encompassed most of what you've mentioned about what you like doing, what are you good at, what you can be paid for, and what does the world need.
Yeah.
And if you put that all together, there are some synergistic combinations. Like, for example, you like to help people. And what was the other thing that you're really driven by? There were two things.
Solving problems.
Solving problems. So that together might be project management or business analyst in a healthcare setting. So those are just some of the examples. What does the world currently pay for, which is currently a form of a job? And what are the things you can offer and have enjoyment or fulfillment? And I think money is a dangerous thing because, for example, you could have probably been a really good project manager in a cigarette company. But what it means is that the better you get, the more harm you're doing in the society. So it's really important that your decision is not just made from how much it pays, but what does it actually do to your surrounding.
Yeah. And I think also aligning your own morals and values with the company that you want to work with as well, right? That's why I love Counties Manukau. Like, their values are so clear cut and they align with mine, like equity, innovation, caring for everyone. I really like that. So I think it helps when you can find a company that does ultimately align with yours. I feel like a lot of those tasks, people kind of do them once and then forget about it. But I like to kind of, in my self-development, to kind of keep going back to them and thinking about how things change, particularly as we get older and we have kids and we can't travel anymore. It's really important to revisit that stuff.
How do you usually store that kind of information for you to come back to?
Journals, Trello boards again. Huge Trello fan, if you didn't get that already. I mean, whatever works for the individual, but personally, I like to just have like a little box that I have my old uni notes in, or workshop stuff, that kind of thing. And I like to just go through it every now and then and just revisit it to see what's the same or what's changed, and am I still aligning to what I want to do. I'm not really like a career goal-driven person, because I like to kind of, like I said, zigzag. I like to see where life takes me, and I like the opportunities that pop up, and I like to take those. And I feel like, for me personally, this is just for myself, this might not be for everyone, but when you are fixated on that goal, you often let other opportunities slide because you're so fixated on that thing that you're kind of blinded to everything else. So I like to have loose goals, but I like to be able to have a bit of flexibility to follow other roads should they arise.
Yeah, I've been hearing that quite often these days. Like, when I was in high school, it was more about what's your long-term goal. But like now these days, because the society changes so quickly, sometimes if you're honed in on one thing, there are so many beautiful scenery and things that you've missed that would have been a bigger opportunity. So I think I totally get where you're going.
Yeah. And my parents have been in the same job for like 40 years, and that's great, and they love it, and that's their purpose. But I was never really that fixated on staying in a role for so long that you become part of the wallpaper, right?
The furniture.
So that's why I've always been like quite keen to just do jobs that can kind of, like, I can try things out, and if it's great, I can stay longer. If I'm not loving it, I can leave and not feel guilty that my CV is full of different jobs and not just one job I've been in for like 10 years. But again, that's just me. That's just how I roll. That's not for everyone. But I guess what I'm saying is that, there are some people that want to do that, the long-term gain, the long journey, but also trying different things in your career is also not a disadvantage. It gives you a lot more insight into different industries. You meet more people, your network gets bigger, you try different things, you get to see how different companies operate, and to bring that knowledge with you into the next role. I think there's a lot of benefits to it.
For sure. I really like that. And I think it takes us nicely to our second piece about when you're in the moment of uncertainty or unsure where the meaning is, it's really hard to find joy and enjoyment, or I don't know, by definition, a sense of purpose in that place. So I think we should talk about a bit around what do you do when you find your work meaningless?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I don't want to offend anyone in this. But, you know, there have been roles where I'm just sitting there going, why am I here? My job brings no value. I have absolutely, you know, I can see the bigger goals of this company and what I'm doing. It just doesn't make a difference. And it's really easy to get depressed by that. And I think that was probably a bit of a realization for a lot of people over the whole pandemic and lockdown and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's hard to give really a hard and fast answer, but I think it's also important to find meaning in other aspects of your life, right? To find those hobbies, to find those bits of joy elsewhere in life that you can maybe direct that kind of energy to after work or on the weekends or whatever. But also if you are experiencing burnout and you don't have that kind of passion anymore to do things after work because you're so tired and just don't have the energy, then that's also a bigger thing that you need to address. And I have experienced that, and it's awful. And so that's when you kind of need to reevaluate why you're in that job and what's it for. You know, I've put up with a lot of crappy roles because I knew that there was always an end point, a trip plan, right? Or something else. So I think you can tolerate those things if you do have something to look forward to. Otherwise, if you are really struggling, you know, it's just a conversation with your manager or, you know, build your network and see what else is out there and what other jobs are out there to find meaning in your work. And just also look at kind of around at your job and look at different projects that could be done. This is also probably a good tip if someone's wanting to get more into project management. What can you contribute to in this current environment at your work that can help, I don't know, build your skill set, contribute to some sort of problem solving or fixing or something like that in your current role? What are the opportunities within your current scope of work that can help you build a new skill set, solve a problem for your job, help you gain more networks within your organization? I don't know, like look at the big picture like that and where can you slot in to find meaning? And then if that's all hopeless, you've got to seek and find another job.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just building enough time for you to move on. And sometimes it's, as you mentioned, what's within my control? What can I do differently? What can I try different things? And then maybe there's an aspect of the role that you'd never thought of that you enjoy, or you find a particular opening in the wider department or wider organization that gives you an opportunity there. So it's kind of looking at, as you mentioned, what's within the scope of work, what's within my control, and also coming to terms what's out of my control. Yeah. Because pandemic, it's definitely out of my control. So it's figuring that out.
One of my ultimate rules for life is control the controllables, right? You know, there's no point getting worked up on things you can't control, but if you can control your happiness and change your job or your role or something within that, then by all means do it. But you know, I think people do just need to get a bit bolder and braver. Find a company that aligns with your goals or your purpose or whatever, and just start out in a kind of a role that might be a little bit beneath you, and build yourself up. You know, get to that point where you can impress them and actually get into a different role that might be more suited to you. You know, like don't take a chance.
And I hope the audience hears that, like, people might think, "Wow, Pipi is so far down the line," but you can hear that you had to figure yourself out over time. In those moments of zigzags and movements, you probably felt insecure and found it challenging as well. So if you're in that moment, it's okay, because if you are wanting to be where Pipi is at right now, she had to go through that. And it's part of the journey. And I guess what I'm most proud of with working with you was that how much fun we had at work. So I think we need to kind of dwell on that a little bit as well. Like, what do you think were the key aspects of having fun at work? Like, that's because sometimes you hate the job, but you love the people. You sometimes hate you, hate some of the aspects of, or dislike, or not prefer some of the things, but you're there because you have good banter, coffee catch-ups, or whatever other things that are not usually within your scope. Yeah, could you guide us within that realm of how do you have fun at work?
Well, I've never been one to take anything too seriously, so I think that helps a lot. But yeah, I think it's also just finding someone in work that really does make you laugh. And I love that relationship that we had, because it was always like, even if I was feeling a bit miserable, I knew that I could find you and just have a giggle. And there were some other colleagues that we worked with that was the same as well, which is really lovely. But yeah, I've just never been one to take life too seriously. And I think that really helps. And I don't know if that's really a piece of advice for for everyone. It's not going to suit people. But I think, life is too short to just be grumpy all the time and not see the positiveness in everything. The other thing I kind of learned a little bit later in my life is that I used to kind of have bad days at work and be like, that's it, I'm throwing it all in, I'm quitting. And then I read something that actually, as humans, we're not born to be happy every single minute of the day, right? The human condition is to kind of go through these peaks and troughs of happiness and sadness and other emotions that we feel. And work's the same. You're going to have really good days and you're going to have really bad days. And it's kind of like, on those bad days, find what makes you happy, or just finish your day, go home, have a bath, or go for a run, or do whatever, you need to get out of that funk. But also the next day is a brand new day. And I think that's a really important piece to remember, is that don't quit your job on a bad day. Quit your bad on a good day. Sorry, quit your job on a good day, because mum brain, because if you're still hating it on a good day, then it's obviously time to go. But bad days are common and they happen to the best of us and the best jobs, so take that as you will.
Love it. I think that's a lot of things for the audience to absorb.
Yeah.
I always end the podcast with I've been trying, it's only the third episode, but I've been ending the last podcast with the question, what would you tell your 20-year-old self, so 20-year-old Pipi, now that you are an older self?
Oh, I don't know, buy Tesla shares. Buy Pfizer shares. I don't know. That's a hard one, because I often think about that, and I don't like to live my life with regrets. I don't have regrets, because like I said, there's no way you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. Everything I've done has built up to this moment today and who I am, and I have no regrets with that. I have no issues with that. So I think my advice to my 20-year-old self would just be, roll with the punches. Don't doubt yourself. You are doing what you're meant to be doing and where you're meant to be. So just keep at it. I don't think that's probably as profound as you're hoping, but
no, it is what it is. I don't think there's anything more profound than what comes out of your mouth, because that's what you think your 20-year-old self would have needed. And my thoughts are, there is someone who is that 20-year-old Pipi out there wanting to hear that. So
God help her.
Yeah, I know the truth will come out. God help her.
But I mean, I live my life by just accepting everything as it is and rolling with the punches and loving it. Yeah, and my kind of whole purpose in life isn't really to be. I used to try and think I was going to be some baller entrepreneur, but now I'm just content with my life I have. I love my life. And so it's taken me a long while to kind of find that my purpose now is just to be happy, and I am happy. So however you can find your happiness and your purpose, get out there and do it. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So today's podcast with Pipi, we talked about her career, how she found her current role, how to get there if you are trying to aim for project management or analyst jobs. And we talked about finding your purpose, how she found her purpose, and looking at what to do when you find your work meaningless. So if you would like to hear more from Pipi, this podcast, Out of Your Mind, Pipi, this is what we do together. Please click like and subscribe.
Fingers.